Today we are talking about the similarities and the differences of the Union and Confederacy at the start of the Civil War. So let's get started. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Virtual History 360. I'm Mr. Wade and we are talking about the beginning of the Civil War. But you know, what about the story of Stewart Tyner of Florida and what happened to him during the war? Tell you what, stick around until the end of the video to find out what happened. But before we get to Stewart Tyner, we should probably talk about the two different sides of the conflict. Of course, there's going to be a heavy focus, an emphasis, if you will, on their differences. But there were also some similarities between the Union and the Confederacy. Okay? So for starters, both sides expected this to be a short war. You know, over in a flash, people were hoping to get their chance, right? They thought there would be a quick victory for their side. Of course, we now know that they were wrong, but at the start, that is what they believed. And although that is a big similarity, the biggest thing between these two armies, talking about the Union and the Confederacy, what they had in common were their soldiers. More than half of each army were farmers before the war, and most were young. The average age of a Civil War soldier was 25.8 years old, but thousands upon thousands were actually younger than 18. You know, they were eager to join the war to fight for their cause, patriotism, both for the Union and the Confederacy. Or they were eager to join because they feared that they would be called a coward back home for not joining. Another thing these soldiers had in common was their communication with their homes. You see, soldiers from both sides sent letters home on a fairly regular basis. In these letters, they described their camp life, what it was like living amongst everyone, their marching, what it was like to travel, their battles, how they did, and even the boring stuff, right? Well, that's how we know so much about the Civil War, because we have so many of these primary source accounts of what happened. We have heard from so many points of view that we can take all of those and piece together the puzzle. But that's the similarities. What about the differences? What about the differences between the North and the South? Well, you're probably thinking about the North being industrial and the South being agrarian. Farming, like agriculture, right? But would you believe that there was actually more food grown in the North? Yeah, it's true. Although the Southern economy was based on agriculture, they grew more cash crops, crops like cotton or tobacco, stuff you can't eat, right? And while the Northern economy was based on industry and, shipping, think of the mills in New England, their farms actually produced more edible crops, corn, wheat, stuff like that. Well, then you have other facts that, think of it, like the North having a larger population and more resources to put into the war effort. That's a big difference. But you gotta look on the other side. The South, there was more experienced military leaders at their disposal, and those leaders could put their resources to good use. And don't forget that the Confederacy was fighting to become an independent nation, while the Union was fighting to restore the country, to restore the Union. Makes sense, right? Well, that gets into the strategies of the two sides. The Confederacy was going to fight a defensive war. Think about it. Most of the battles were fought in the Confederacy, where they would just have to hold their positions and make the Union take the land from them. They hoped that this would eventually cause the North to tire out, or for them to lose the support of the citizens and then give up the fight. The South also hoped that Britain and France, these European countries, would join their cause because they depended on Southern cotton. The Union, on the other hand, followed a more aggressive plan, laid out by Winfield Scott, called the Anaconda Plan. Much like the constrictor snake that it's named after, the Union was going to blockade all of the major southern ports. This was designed to cut them off from the world, to cut off their trade and commerce, to really suffocate them. And then, after they were cut off, they would systematically cut the Confederacy into two and eventually lead to the capture of their capital city, Richmond, Virginia. So, that covers the big ideas, and it really is easy to forget that this war was fought with individuals. I mean, brother versus brother and neighbor versus neighbor. It's important to dig a little deeper, to look at the soldiers who carried out the orders from above, not just the generals at the top. So, what about Stuart Tyner, the man I mentioned earlier? Let's talk about him. Well, he was born on February 20th, 1840, and he mustered into the Florida Militia, not the Confederacy, but the Florida Militia, on October 27th, 1861. He was originally stationed to guard Fort Brooke in Tampa, but when there was a disagreement between their commander and the governor of Florida, Governor Milton, the unit was disbanded and his company was folded in or joined with the 8th Florida Regiment. He was in the 8th Florida Company K. This regiment saw action at numerous battles, including some of the big ones like Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville, but the battle that has the biggest impact on our story, the story of Stuart Tyner, is Gettysburg. Stuart Tyner was captured on day 3 of the battle during the Pickett-Pettigrew-Trimble attack. You probably know this Pickett's charge, but there was more. After he was captured, he was sent to Fort Delaware prison camp, and he stayed there. It was there that he stayed until the end of the war. Now, if you take a look at his pension request, take a look at this. You can see, it's hard to see, it's cursive if you're not used to that, but it tells you that he lost an eye somewhere. It could have been during battle at some point, or while he was a POW. I couldn't find records of that, but either way, he came back to Central Florida to live the remainder of his life. Now, he was married, had children, and 3 of his daughters married into the Bronson family. If you're from Central Florida, that name should be familiar, right? Marrying into that cattle family cements his legacy in Osceola County lore. Now, Stuart Tyner died on September 5th, 1917, at the age of 77, and is buried at the Shingle Creek Cemetery in Kissimmee, Florida. Tell you what, check out this video here, or here I guess, if you'd like to learn more about Stuart Tyner. Now, what do you think about the story? Stuart Tyner, what about his story? Do you like it? And just think, that's just one example of the millions of Civil War soldiers. Do you know of any individual stories that you could share? Tell me in the comments below. Tell me what you know. And of course, while you're there, go ahead and hit that like button for me. I love the engagement. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If that button's red, let's turn it gray. And while you're doing all that, check out my other videos. I know you're going to like them. I have other U.S. history, world history. I have civics, government videos. I even have videos that are shot in 360 that you can look all the way around. All right, so check them out. Virtual History 360, I'm Mr. Wade. I'll see you next time.